All right. Hello, welcome to week 6. Um, Yay, it's more than halfway through the term, which is pretty wild, but that's the way things go, right? Okay. So gonna start off with Discord. So we have kind of a busy day. It's more of a discussion like day. Whereas I mean, how would I say? Yeah, I mean there could be discussion. So as when I start the presentation, for the three or four people who are here. Four people who are here, you could go ahead and chime in, um, but not yet. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with Discord. Okay, I'm switching to Discord view. Okay, so again, here's just as usual. Here's the week 6 stuff. Um, blah blah blah. So okay, for sharing, um, the activity for today's week is show us an artwork you love for a personal reason and describe why. So mine is a book of calligraphy of quotes that my mom made for my thesis show. You can go ahead and read it. And then for discussion is what part of your subject position, which is a term I'll define in this lecture, what affects the way you see art the most? I put a couple different things for this, but it's something I'll be talking about more during the lecture. So those are those. Also, let's see. I was really happy with the comics. Um, yeah, I guess the directions weren't clear enough at the beginning. You're only supposed to use triangles, circles, squares, and rectangles. But if you didn't do that, you got credit anyways. But yeah, it was really fun seeing what everyone had to offer, especially knowing that not everyone here is an art major, and to see that um, amount of effort put into it was really, really cool. So yeah, I was very impressed. Um, I gave credit to everyone this morning who did it, and it just made me really happy. So thank you for doing that. And if you haven't done that yet, again, you can submit things in late by the end of week 9. You'll get 10% off, but it's better than getting 0 credit. Okay. And last thing, before I start the lecture is, your writing assignment is due 13 days from now on the, let's see. I have it on Discord somewhere. Writing assignment. I have a link here. That's opening in Safari. We don't want that. Copy. I'm gonna switch sharing mode. I'm gonna switch it to Google Chrome. Okay. So it's due the 25th, which is 2 weeks from now. So I just want to remind everyone that that exists. Just FYI. Okay, because I know you kind of get lost in things, and again, just wanted to remind you all. So yeah. All right. So if anyone in the chat um, has any like questions or whatever in regards to our topic today, I'm happy to do that. Of course, this is an experiment. We'll see what happens. Okay. All right. So for this week's topic, it's the meta of this class, essentially. It's how I sort of go about things, how I'm teaching this class, and what art history means, essentially. Okay. All right. So the first question is, do you trust me to teach this class? The reason I bring this up is because I'm interested in like questioning authority and such, and I don't want to be exempt from that. So here's my qualifications. I was hired to teach this class. This is my second time teaching. I wasn't fired after the first time, which is a good thing. And I have an MFA in art, and that's required in order to teach it. So these are my personal qualifications. The art I choose to show in this class is a personal choice. Depending on which instructor you get, you'll get different things. So most of the the art I show comes from Twitter. I'm on it every day. I use it more as a method of finding cool art and cool stuff, video games, more than the social aspect of like networking or talking about my breakfast, which is one reason I'm not on Instagram. Um, but that's how I find most of my art, that I consume. I also try to show more women, people of color, but it's hard because a lot of the avatars, I don't know who these people are. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Last year I was more conscientious about it, but this time I guess I'm more interested in um, what makes sense for this, while trying to include women, people of color, and I'll talk more about why those two groups. Um, I'm definitely more interested in what's happening today than, let's say, the Italian Renaissance period. I have a very short attention span and I need new information like all the time, which is something I've accepted about myself, but it kind of bugs me. So yeah, stuff that like is like new is way more interesting to me because I'm I prefer that over talking about the same thing over and over and over again. Um, oh, okay, so well, actually, okay, so hmm, if someone on Discord can message Quentin and give him the link to this uh, Zoom meeting, that would be great. Thanks. Uh, okay, so also, I'm more interested in like smaller, weirder things. Like, I'm not afraid to call myself a hipster. I know I'm totally a hipster when it comes to that kind of stuff. I generally shy away from like bigger stuff. I think it's equally cool and valid, but I just like supporting the underdogs is more what it comes around to. Um, Again, I don't care about being called a hipster. It's fine. And the last point, I'm not very good with like going deeper with meanings when it comes to artworks. Like I can do it, but it's not as pleasurable to me. Let me say it like that. I'm very much a literalist, and so I'm more of a what you see is what you get type of person. But something we'll talk about more next week is like the feelings I get from it is different than like reading into like the history behind the work. So that definitely influences what I show y'all. Oops. Okay, subject position. So this is an important thing. Subject position is basically a fancy art school term for saying like who you are. That's what informs you of your reading of things today. So there's many different ways to define subject position and how that affects you. But for here, I put identity and background. So I'm a cis male. I'm queer. I'm Mexican American. I'm a feminist. I'm politically independent. You could probably guess my politics, but I don't identify with Democrats or Republicans. Um, so I'm like what is it called? I vote case by case essentially. I don't adhere to a party's ideals. So um, I'm independent when it comes to that. My background, this is a big one. My mom worked in the community college as the art department secretary, so I was like around like people in the position that I am right now today. So that obviously affected me, and my mom that made my mom like open to me wanting to be an artist. She brought art home. She took me to art shows. So that obviously influenced who I am today. Um, I'm a mama's boy, so I got to give love to her. I was raised in a Mexican Catholic family. I'm not sure how much that affected me, besides the fact that art was not as masculine, and um, my family's very masculine sports lovers, and I'm not. I hate sports. No, I don't hate sports. I intensely dislike most of them. I'm more into like creation and collaboration than like competition. Lower middle class, so that means like I'm still middle class, which means I still have access to um like I grew up in Southern California, which is the next one. like I said, like I'm embarrassed to say it that I'm from there because I could not stand it. But that was a huge influence because I grew up with the privilege of like living in a place where there like access to LA was close, access to galleries was really close. So I was very lucky in that sense. Whereas if I grew up somewhere else, like with less access to art galleries, then I might not be the person I am today. Um, Younger brothers, so there's this birth order thing where basically younger brothers are better, obviously. Um, I mean, I mean, generally behind that is younger. I think it's just younger siblings in general. Younger siblings tend to aim higher than the older siblings. So I have a master's degree. My brother doesn't have anything. Now what, Nick? Um, and both my parents have uh, AA degrees, so that's definitely an influence. And so the reason I bring this up is the way you learn about art always has a bias to it. So the way you're learning about things from me comes from my perspective. So if you were taking a class from Isabel, for example, it would be much different. I think she would be teaching um I think like Byzantine art at this point, or Dutch 17th century Dutch still life painting. I forgot which century. So the way I'm teaching it is the way that makes sense to me. Um, like going further into that, like Isabel's a art historian. She knows like so much about so much different stuff when it comes to art history. I'm more of an artist, where I'm more into the creation side. So you're getting more of an artist perspective from this class. Okay, it would be a lot different if you took an art historian's class like Isabel, and even the other instructors. I believe Andrew Douglas Campbell is teaching this, and I forgot who else. But they would definitely have a different perspective than I do because even though we're all artists, um, we all make art differently and we think about art differently. Okay, and this is important. There's no such thing as completely complete objectivity about art. Everything's influenced by who the artist is, who you are. Everything has a tinge of someone's personality in it, or the culture's personality. There's no such thing as completely objective art. Like art cannot exist within the vacuum. It's created within a culture, and that's really important to know. Um, so this sentence, the art history we learn in the US generally favors English speaking, white, upper middle class, straight mid. So I'm going to explain what this means. I want to make sure you know, like, I'm not attacking this group of people. This is generally the people who are in power and sort of who control power structures, and control knowledge and stuff like that. So I'm going to go over it one by one. Okay, so English speaking, this should make a lot of sense to y'all. Let me move myself out of the way. Um, so as far as English speaking, like English speakers don't understand other languages most of the time, especially in America. So that's an obvious barrier. But there are translations. The problem with translations is sometimes they can't capture the nuances of the other language. So even though you can translate things, they won't always have the same meaning because you're not part of that culture. And with that, you miss certain things that may only exist in that culture. So essentially, since we're an English speaking country, we're going to privilege um, like the language that we're familiar with and that we can relate to and understand. I mean, but even then, if we're talking about like Australian art, it will be a little bit different, right? Because their culture is different than American art, and even from Oregon art to, let's say, like Louisiana art, there's probably a lot of difference there as well. So um, there's an issue of like translation, but there's also um, the problem of just being a jerk about it and just seeing um, non-English speakers as inferior or stupid or savages, which is a huge problem. That's something we cannot, like, that cannot be denied. Um, like, I mean, like, for example, I can even say about myself, um, I'm probably gonna skip a lot of art from other countries just because of the fact that I don't understand it, which is kind of crappy, but I don't have that time. So um, I privilege English speaking artwork. Um, sorry. And no, even though I am Mexican American, no, I don't speak Spanish, unfortunately. No, which makes me sad, but oh well. White. So, white is generally meant to mean European, which is obviously not like a full, like, not everyone in European is white, obviously. Okay, but a lot of art history does privilege that perspective. If you look at art history books, most of the time the people will be white. Um, and white is definitely like a nebulous, weird definition of a group of people because it means many different things, right? Someone from, again, like Louisiana is different than someone from Sweden, right? But they're both considered white. So what does that mean? I don't know. It's very complex. It's beyond the scope of this class, but essentially, um, I've taken many classes on art, and most of the artists that are represented and most like portraits are of white people, um, and this is something purely by numbers. Um, it's it's undisputable that this is the case, and of course, this comes from like what's being represented and what we see in media. We see like the standards and ideals, and this is what we strive to become, and this is what we idealize most of the time. Of course, if it's a culture that has like Mexicans, like we I shouldn't call myself Mexican. I'm Mexican American. I'm a third generation. But like Mexican culture will like privilege Mexican people, right? But at the same time, the art history we learn in the US, even though US is pretty diverse, I mean, not Oregon, obviously, but in the US we learn about pretty much like white European culture. And that's because of like colonialization and power structures. Again, like Europeans saw themselves as superior for having like better technology and stuff like that, and sort of proliferate their knowledge all over the world. And so that's why the white point of view is the dominant point of view. Um, I'm not either right here. Like racism is a huge part of it. I don't want to get into that. Like, no. Um, it's something I'm not willing to talk to you about in class because it makes me very angry. Um, yeah, that's okay. And again, down here it says there's nuances and exceptions, of course, but again, things are overwhelmingly um, privileging white European points of view. Okay, upper middle class. All right, so again, this comes basically the axis. So as far as art is concerned, a lot of artwork is expensive, right? Thousands of dollars for a painting or whatever. Even if it's like this small, it could cost thousands of dollars. And so what that does, it prevents people with not a lot of disposable income from affording it and being able to purchase it. So what this does is it puts power into rich people's hands, right? Um, Another point is going to college to learn about art costs money. Um, so it's a privilege to be able to. I mean, not necessarily this class because this is a general ed class, but if you can go to college, you either have like a little bit of money, you're on loans, you're taking out student loans, or you're doing scholarships. And I put this here because like seriously, please apply to as many scholarships as you can. I cannot emphasize this as enough. I got a full ride to U of O, so please apply to scholarships. Like, highly encourage it. Um, Save yourself for your parents' money or whatever. Also, if you're able to study art as a career, like that has a sort of privilege to it, right? Because there's not as much stability in the art field. Like, it's really, really difficult to find a job doing art. Very, very difficult. I feel like I won the lottery when I got this part-time position, pretty much. So other career paths like STEM or trades, those have more stable career paths essentially, and to be able to study art is like I'm willing to take this risk to not have a stable job. Luckily, I have a supportive mom that was down for that. So I am very privileged in that sense. Having the time to make art is a privilege as well, because if you're like too busy working, you won't really have much creative energy to put into art, which sucks a lot, right? Our system is pretty awful when it comes to leisure time. Um, so that's a huge thing. And again, to have access to art in the first place is a big thing. Like if you live in a rural town, there'll be less access to like galleries and museums. You have to travel to bigger cities, and people who live in bigger cities are surrounded by art all the time. So there's more privilege there, and of course, the bigger city you live in, the more money it costs. So again, this art benefits people with money more. I'm personally very, very poor, but I still live a middle class lifestyle. Um, I scrape by, but I still like grew up in this middle class that was like, okay, like you can teach art. You don't have to like, I don't know, like work two jobs to support like the entire family, right? So I'm very, very, very privileged. And if you're in that position, it's really good to like be grateful for that. That'll just make you a happier person in general. Um, Heteronormativity, of course, 90% of the population is heterosexual, and because us queers or LGBTQIA people are 10%, we're represented a lot less, and we're often seen as weirdos or outsiders. Sometimes we're included in art just because for like diversity's sake, without actually caring about diversity. I'm again, this is one of those things I could go on and on about, um, but I'm gonna move on. Man, okay, so another topic I'm very passionate about is how art privileges men. So instead of talking about how messed up this is, um, I'm just going to show you these images made by the Gorilla Girls, who are an art collective who talk about gender inequality in the art world. So I have these two things, shows like what's being represented. Like men are overwhelmingly represented. Um, and then I have this link to a half-hour video called Ways of Seeing. It's episode 2 in the 4-part series. And this talks a lot about like how women are consumed in mass media. So if you're a man, I highly encourage talking to women who deal with these things every day and get their perspective, and listen to them and believe them when they tell you things, and don't dismiss women, because that is messed up, right? Um, so yeah, please respect women and treat them as humans, which isn't a very high bar to put, but that should be the minimum. Okay, so yeah, again, I could go on and on about this, but all right, let's move on. All right, so let's take a look at a simple communication model. So I'm not sure. Sorry, I keep on like moving back and forth, and this microphone's very sensitive. So sorry if I blast um, into your earphones if you're wearing them. So I'm not sure if I remembered this, but or if I mentioned this, but I did a minor in human communication, which is a weird major, but it helped me understand humans because I'm a very awkward human being, and this helped me integrate into the regular people zone better. So this is a model of a simple model of communication. This is extremely simplified. There's many models of communication. But this is basically what is necessary for me to get my point across. Okay. And I did purposely take this slide because this is like a Google Slides like preset thing. I thought it was kind of funny to do something like a slideshow within a slideshow. Anyways, so here's the process of communication. So encoding is here. This is me right now. This is me taking my knowledge and encoding it into information so I can transmit this information to teach to you, and this information being um, the, what I'm teaching you right now. Okay. And this is influenced by my subject position. So again, what I'm teaching you is influenced by who I am, my experiences, and that's all going into this encoding process. So imagine all this information, I grab it and I put it into a bowl, and this is how I'm encoding it. I'm putting it into the communication media. So I'm putting this ball of information into this slideshow that you're looking at right now. Okay, so again, this is a medium that I'm transmitting information to you. So noise right here exists on the top and bottom here. It's basically all around the communication medium. So this interferes with a perfect delivery of what I'm trying to tell you. So this includes stuff if you have a bad connection, if I have a bad connection, if I'm too far away from the mic, if I'm too close to the mic. Sorry, I should have given the warning. Stuff like that can be distracting. I know I say and like a bit too much, which is something I've been criticized for since my human communication speech class. It's really hard to get rid of it, even though I've been teaching for 4 years. Like stuff like that can interfere with a perfect presentation. I think if I was speaking Korean, that would be noise as well, because you probably wouldn't understand that. Unless someone speaks Korean, but I don't. All I know is Egi Sursa, which I'm not going to translate. I mean, it means baby diarrhea. Don't ask why I know that. It's a long story. Okay, anyways, and the decoding is the students. Um, this is you interpreting the message that is encoded through the medium, and you have to deal with the noise, and you have to deal with how I encode this information. So this information is not perfect because there's this medium that exists, and the noise that prevents it from being perfect. But even if those were perfect, it's impossible to perfectly transmit my ideas into your brain because of the fact that we have our biases. Again, the way I talk about things might be different than the way you talk about things. Like, for example, if you grew up on the East Coast, then the way you might approach this class could be different than me, who lives on the West Coast and who grew up in the West Coast, right? Just those little differences can make an impact on how you interpret things. Okay, so essentially, you have biases as well as a student. So yes, I am biased, but you are too. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to see how much time I have. Still have half an hour. All right, so think about the position that you have. Like, how have you come across art in your life? Has your family exposed you to it? Have you gone out and sought it? Do you just not care about? Are you taking this class just because you have to? And you don't really care about art. Um, think about like who you are and how you grew up and how that affects how you see art. Okay, and of course, the the point of this class, besides to give transfer credits or whatever, is to teach you about art and to think about art a lot more in ways that you might not know already. Um, I'll say even I'm learning things as I do research to present to this class. I spent all day yesterday preparing this lecture. I was going to do another lecture, then I realized, I should probably do this one first. And so I spent all day just researching, and I just learned a lot of stuff. So yeah, even me as someone who has a master's degree, I'm constantly learning, right? And so this class is essentially trying to help prepare you further to deal with art. And even I'm learning, and the way you react to like questions and stuff, I learn stuff as well, right? So I'm learning from y'all as well. So think of art, of this class, as a constant exchange of ideas between like culture at large and myself and y'all. Okay, so remember, like, everything's filtered through different media, and um, think about, again, I'm repeating myself. Just think about what I talked about. So another varying concept that occurs on your end is, what do you want from art? Okay, so this is something, and what I talked about this, before, but what you get out of art is what you put into it. Um, so I'm gonna go into this in further detail next week, but just to go over this really quickly, like, think about like why you want to look at art, like what you're trying to get from it. How deep do you want to go, or do you not want to go deep at all? Like I've mentioned before, I don't really look for meanings all the time. I want to see how it affects me. Um, but again, we're going to talk about this more next week. So this video right here is essentially, how long is it? 9 minutes of that basically sum up this class, or this particular lecture, but done by a different person, obviously. And the way she talks about it affects how she teaches you. I'm not gonna have us watch it together. But there's also more information that I didn't go over here, right? So definitely watch that. There's also this extremely great article / reading of, um, let me switch to, okay. So it's called Does Art History Matter? And this talks about how art history is a very insular place, meaning essentially that a lot of art historians and people in the art field talk in the language that only makes sense to them, and they gatekeep people out of it. Um, so it becomes this very elitist place, which makes sense because upper middle class rich people want to keep their place, right? They want to have that sense of power and privilege. So yeah, it's a really good article / reading. You could listen to it as well. Just be warned, she has a thick accent, so it might be hard for some people to understand. But it's a really good way of understanding um, how there's a lot of privilege within art, and how that prevents people from accessing it. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to me. Um, so that's so one thing I want to do with this class that I find really important is to make it accessible. So I'm not bashing on anyone else, um, but a lot of other art history classes have these like really old paintings and sculpture that are by Greeks and masters of art forms, which is great to learn from. When you're taking art history class, period, you need to learn those things, and that's awesome. Um, but the class I'm teaching, Understanding Art, right now, is how to engage with art. So one of my biggest missions with this class is to make And this is one of my teaching philosophies, is to make the class accessible as possible. And what I mean by that is I don't want to exclude anyone. Um, so, so in the video that I'm showing, the one I called like "Why Do You Hate Art History?" One thing that the host Sarah points out is that you can't really relate to a lot of the stuff from old days, right? Like in Greek times, for example. Um, and I find that like a pretty important point, because of the fact that we're learning about these things that are detached from our reality. And so, what I'm trying to bring to this class is basically what I find on Twitter. And the reason I do that is not just because it's more fun for me and because I'm on Twitter every day. It's because I want to bring in artwork that is like more immediately relatable to y'all. Assuming y'all are like completely immersed in Greek sculpture. Um, so again, like I think showing that kind of stuff that y'all will come to naturally, is really important. And because I don't want art to seem like an inaccessible thing. I know that a lot of people, including myself at one time, are like will be intimidated when coming or going into a gallery or museum, and just like not knowing what to do, not knowing like how long do I look at a painting, and stuff like that. And frankly, that sucks, like to have that feeling. And again, the feeling's there is because you're probably not a rich white upper class middle cis, or cis male, right? um, I mean, you might be some of those things, but if you're not like rich and you don't have a degree in art history, those things, like, you're probably going to feel a little bit intimidated in a museum, right? Because there's all these precious things you can't afford, these things you don't know about, um, which is like true, but also like museums and galleries should strive to be accessible. So a lot of them like will often have, um, like information plates near the side that says like here's the artist, the year, medium, and hopefully a little description of it. Um, and it depends on where you're going. So if it's a contemporary art gallery, which means like artists who are alive today and they're showing stuff, a lot of them don't give information on what they're showing, and the artwork can be a little bit weird and abstract, which is something we'll talk about next week. It can be like weird, and I don't know what's going on. Like the banana duct tape to the wall, um, which I think we'll talk about next week, maybe. Um, but stuff like that is not very accessible to the public, right? And I it depends on who the artist is, but I generally don't like that. I like for information to be given. Sometimes mystery is good. Sometimes the artist is expressing something that can't be put into words, and that's fine. But to sort of deliberately hide like meaning behind like layers of metaphors and obscuring things for the sake of gatekeeping, I'm 100% against. I cannot stand that stuff. um, so that's why, again, I've been really into showing stuff from Twitter. um, I don't have Instagram and I don't have TikTok, otherwise I would be showing stuff from that, um, or Facebook for that matter. um, it's basically it's because I just can't deal with social media. I'm an old man in that sense. Like I just can't deal with that stuff. There's just too much information there. Um, so again, like I'm trying to make things make sense to you as much as possible. So I do want so in the what is it called? Um, One of the sections in Discord, the bottom section where I have like question of the day songs, like I kind of hoping y'all will participate more in that, because again, um I'm kind of existing in a vacuum. I'm posting stuff I think is cool, but I don't know what y'all think is cool, really. Um, and because I'm a hipster, I have my own little bubble of stuff that I'm really, really into. And I'm kind of obsessed with that, and I rarely look outside of that. So any sort of like insight into like more things that you want me to show, like I'm super down for that. Um, and I want to break down that hierarchy of like, of course, I'm an instructor and I have the power to like, I have the power of like, this is the information you'll receive, and I'm giving you grades and stuff like that. And of course, there needs to be that hierarchy, right? But as far as like being a person is concerned, I'm not above you. Just because I have an MFE degree, that doesn't mean that I'm a better um, artist than you. I'm a pretty bad artist. I'm more about like ideas and concepts and stuff. I have really bad hand-eye coordination, but again, even though I like studied art, my opinions are not better than yours. They're just different. It's it's something I've put more time into probably, but that doesn't mean I'm better than you or my perspectives are better than you. I don't believe in that at all. Um, so again, that goes back to like the fact that I'm privileged to have this knowledge and I want to share it with you, but I don't want to seem like intimidating and stuff. And I can, and another thing and I like being transparent about this too. So when it comes to like Discord, I do type like and like proper sentences. Sometimes I don't. The reason I don't always do proper sentences or like punctuation and stuff is because it's like I'm just a person. I'm not trying to make this super fancy or whatever. So again, I want to encourage y'all to have fun with this more than just think of it as an obligation. I do want you to do your work though. I noticed like I went over grades again, and some people are missing a lot of stuff, and that's kind of a bummer. This class is eh, or the way I teach is more about can you follow directions more than like are you good at stuff. Like I'm a very easy teacher. It's pretty obvious. I'm very casual about things. So um, yeah, I want to work with you. So um yeah, that as far as lecture, if there's any questions with the chat, um please let me know within the next like 10 seconds or so if you have any comments or whatever. Um, but again, I think about who I am as a person and how that affects how I'm teaching you. This is something I would encourage you to think about for future classes or your other classes. Like, who is your instructor? How does that inform what they're teaching you? How does that color the information that they're giving to you? And um, it's important to not take these things for granted because even if we're all teaching from the same book, everyone who's teaching this class would be giving different lectures. Even if the slides were the same exact way, um, they would be different. So again, you really want to think about how the world affects how you learn things and how it affects art. Okay. All right, so I guess we're ending early. I expected to just like go on longer rants and stuff, but um, I didn't. So um, you're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. But if there's like more stuff you want to talk about in regards to this, um, please like bring it up. Probably in the To Do 6 channel. Okay, so yeah, I would love to have more conversations about this as much as possible. Again, unfortunately, like with this being online, it's hard to get reactions from people. When I taught it last year face to face, it was like a really good discussion. Like we had a lot of it was kind of intense actually. But since this is like kind of a different medium, it's not the same, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, you're still getting um, what you need out of this. Okay. So, all right. I'm bad at like signing off. So thank you. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll see you on Discord. And be nice and compassionate, and um, question everything. All right. Bye.